It is the afternoon of Tuesday, July 25th, 2000, as Concorde, registered Foxtrot Bravo Tango Sierra Charlie, prepares to depart from Paris's Charles de Gaulle Airport. It will operate Air France Flight 4590, a charter flight with 100 passengers to New York. Concorde is one of the most iconic planes to ever take flight. Developed from a collaboration of French and British aerospace companies, it is one of 2 passenger aircraft ever built to operate faster than the speed of sound, at Mach 2.04. It can make the jump over the Atlantic in just 3 hours, though passengers are asked to fork out for such tremendous speed, with return leg tickets usually costing over $10,000 in today's money. Air France 4590 is operated by a 3-person crew: Captain Christian Marty, First Officer Jean Marceau, and Flight Engineer Gilles Jardineau. As the passengers begin to board, they work through a number of items to prepare Concorde for departure. The first is a defect on one of the engine's thrust reversers. With it unavailable, weight restrictions may mean that not all passengers and their bags can be boarded. Therefore, the crew requests for the thrust reverser to be repaired, despite it potentially causing a delay. They then ask the dispatcher to file a direct flight plan to New York. All 3 crew operate this route regularly and have good knowledge of it. With the thrust reverser issue out of the way, the crew prepare their load data. Almost 93 tons of fuel brings the takeoff weight to 184,880 kilograms, with center of gravity position at 54%. Along with environmental factors, the crew use this to calculate their V-speeds for takeoff. V1 is the speed at which the aircraft must continue the takeoff and become airborne, even with a major or minor problem, as there is not enough runway left for the aircraft to stop. VR is when the aircraft will rotate and become airborne, while V2 is a critical speed after takeoff. If Concorde loses an engine, V2 must be accurately maintained by the pilots to ensure it continues to climb. With most of the data complete, the crew begin to work through their pre-flight checklists.
So I have 91.9 and 52.2.
Aircraft weight total?
186.95.
Totalizers?
At 0.
Ref speeds.
So the reference speeds: V1 150, VR 198, V2 222.
Secondary air doors.
Auto.
Feeder pump for 3.
On.
Hydraulic alternator for 3.
Off and off.
Anti-collision and seat belts.
The seat belts on and on.
That's it.
The crew finish off their checklists, and soon after, with the thrust reverser repaired, passengers on board, and all doors closed, Concorde is ready for departure. The 4 engines roar to life as it pushes back. At 4:34 PM, the first officer requests taxi clearance.
Concorde 4590 to taxi, next to 5 South we are.
Air France 4590, good day. Taxi to holding point 26 right via Romeo.
Hello, via Romeo 26 right.
The crew make their way to the runway and receive a clearance to line up. As they do so, they conduct their final checks before takeoff.
4590, line up on runway 26 right.
We line up and hold on 26 right, 4590.
Ready in the back?
Let's go.
How much fuel have we used?
We've got 800 kilos here.
Right, brakes 100 degrees.
Air France 4590, runway 26 right, wind 090, 8 knots. Cleared for takeoff.
4590, takeoff 26 right.
Is everybody ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Knots.
Checked.
4 greens.
V1. Whoa, watch out!
Stop.
Concorde, 4590, you have flames. You have flames behind you.
Roger!
Failure engine 2. Shut down engine 2.
Engine fire procedure.
Watch the airspeed. The airspeed.
Retract the gear.
4590, you have strong flames behind you.
Yes, roger.
The gear. The gear.
No.
So you do as you wish. You have priority to return to the field.
Gear retract.
I'm trying!
Are you shutting down engine 2 there?
I've shut it down.
Airspeed! The gear isn't retracting! The airspeed!
Concorde is airborne for just 1 minute before it becomes overrun by flames. Several photographs captured the final, terrifying moments of Air France 4590. It crashes onto a hotel 5 miles to the west of Charles de Gaulle Airport. The aircraft is destroyed. All 109 passengers and crew are killed, as well as 4 individuals on the ground, with 6 more sustaining injuries. We'll shortly revisit the key events of the crash, but back on the runway, leftover debris offers some clues as to what may have happened. A piece of bent metal is found and identified as not being a part of Concorde, while destroyed parts of Concorde's fuel tank and brake servo valves are uncovered. Tyre marks on the runway show that something led to a deviation in the takeoff run, and a combination of leaked fuel, followed by soot, confirms that something set Concorde alight. To determine how this crash happened, let's rewind to the beginning of Air France 4590's takeoff roll.
Air France 4590, runway 26 right, wind 090, 8 knots. Cleared for takeoff.
4590, takeoff 26 right.
Is everybody ready?
The first 38 seconds of the takeoff occurred perfectly normally. The first officer called out 100 knots to cross-check the airspeed indicators, and the flight engineer made the 4 greens call out, referring to green lights which confirm that all 4 engines are operating normally. V1 signalled to the crew that they no longer had enough runway to stop the plane, and any failures which occurred would be taken into the air. It is just seconds later that the accident sequence begins. The precursor to this entire accident was a piece of debris on the runway, left over from a DC-10 when it took off 5 minutes earlier. It is a metallic strip which somehow detached from the DC-10's engine cowl. 1700 meters into Air France 4590's takeoff roll, the tyre of Concorde's number 2 wheel impacted the debris, and suffered a catastrophic failure. With explosive force, part of the tyre impacted the number 5 fuel tank. It ruptured and ripped out an entire piece of the tank. As fuel spilled, a short distance of kerosene was left on the runway, but soon after, these marks turned to soot, signalling that this is where the fire first started. Beginning to deviate left, the aircraft is now passing 182 knots, still accelerating towards VR.
Whoa, watch out!
Stop.
The FO was referring to the engine 1 and 2 go lights here. They extinguished as both left side engines began to lose thrust, due to ingestion of hot gases and debris. Meanwhile, the captain began to pull back, trying to get the Concorde to fly, with the runway remaining quickly reducing. Number 1 and 2 engines continued to surge, but never regained full thrust.
Failure engine 2. Shut down engine 2.
Engine fire procedure.
With engine 1 in a recovery phase, and in such an unusual situation, the flight engineer tried to revert to his standard procedures, and announced the failure of the number 2 engine. The captain swiftly requested the engine fire procedure, and the engineer responded by reducing the number 2 thrust lever to idle, and pulling the fire handle.
Watch the airspeed. The airspeed.
With the speed 20 knots below the V2 of 220 knots, and the aircraft in danger of stalling, the FO called out airspeed. Retracting the gear here would have helped with reducing drag and increasing speed. However, due to the explosion, it is believed that the left landing gear door became jammed open, thus inhibiting the retraction of the landing gear.
Gear retract.
I'm trying!
By this time, the fire had been established for 35 seconds, and it was beginning to have serious impacts on the aircraft's structure. While with 2 engines completely failed, Concorde couldn't accelerate to V2.
Are you shutting down engine 2 there?
I've shut it down.
Airspeed! The gear isn't retracting! The airspeed!
The crew began to lose control. The aircraft pitched up to over 25 degrees and rolled harshly to the left, probably caused by the asymmetric thrust of the engines as well as damage to the plane's structure. Investigators believe that even if the engines had been operating normally, the serious damage caused by the fire would have led to the loss of control of the aircraft. As for the flight crew, an excerpt from the accident report puts it best. The crew had no way of grasping the overall reality of the situation. They reacted instinctively when they perceived an extremely serious but unknown situation. Each time the situation allowed, they applied established procedure in a professional way. Despite a wealth of experience and high level of training, the fire was just too destructive for the crew to overcome. The probable cause of the crash came in 3 parts. First, the impact with the debris on the runway and explosion of Concorde's tyre. Second, the destruction of the fuel tank as a result of the explosion. And finally, the ignition of the fire, most likely an electric arc in the landing gear bay or an extremely hot part of the engine. While this accident is seen by many as the precursor to Concorde's downfall, it was another 2 years before the airframe was retired, due to economic reasons rather than safety. Neither Air France or British Airways could find a way to make the supersonic aircraft profitable. While passenger flights above the speed of sound are again on the horizon, Concorde was ahead of its time in what may be seen as a common service in the future. Though July 25th, 2000 will always be a blemish on Concorde's otherwise perfect record of safety, more significant is that 113 lives were tragically lost.